Wow. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to say in this video. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to start it or end it. But the one thing I am sure is that I am not going to forget about that race for a very long time. I mean, what an incredible 2020 Italian Grand Prix. Just when you thought that Formula One was boring, it was really just 2020 personified in a race. Utter chaos, utter carnage. You never knew what was going to happen from lap to lap. And yeah, controversy, of course, as usual in Formula One. But in the end, it was Pierre Gasly to come across the line and win the Italian Grand Prix for AlphaTauri, and then Carlos Sainz in second in the McLaren, and then Lance Stroll to complete the podium in third. Three different teams, three different engine manufacturers as well, and a whole load of action, controversy, and again, carnage and chaos along the way. So yeah, in this video, it's going to be a little bit of a reaction and also just talking about what we just saw, what we just witnessed, and why Formula One is so special, and why you can never predict what is really going to happen, because Formula One, like it always does, surprises you just when you least expect it. Now guys, just before we do get into it, don't forget, if you do enjoy my content, and don't forget to drop a like, smash that subscribe button, and don't forget to check out my social medias. Instagram and Twitter will be above. But guys, let's get into this one. Now, to be honest, I've got the race classification right down here. I'm gonna, if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at. And even looking at it now, I cannot believe that this is what we finished with. This is the order of the 2020 Italian Grand Prix. It's just nuts. Now, I'm not going to do a race review talking about every single driver and every single team, because I'm sure there are loads of other YouTubers that are going to do that. I'm going to talk about just kind of the really big highlights, the really big stories coming out of that race. And just before we do talk about, the race winner and all of the really, absolutely incredible results at the top of the field, let's begin with Ferrari. I feel like it's only fair, obviously, coming off the back of their home Grand Prix. A horrible weekend from start to finish, let's be honest. I mean, Sebastian Vettel not making it out of Q1, Charles Leclerc not making it out of Q2, and then a double DNF in their home race. I mean, to be honest, I'm not really that surprised. I'm surprised at the fact that they had a double DNF, but I'm not surprised that they struggled from start to finish. And you could see, even when Sebastian Vettel was on track, his car was just all over the place, especially after the parabolic. I mean, the camera shots, that Ferrari is just so shaky. It's all over the show. And in the end, obviously, he did have a brake failure, so he had a DNF. And then Charles Leclerc with a really heavy shunt at the parabolic. Thankfully, he was fine, which, we have to thank to the safety of these cars. It was a really big shunt. But yeah, he also struggled with the back of it. He lost the back of it, and I'm not surprised. That car looked shaky all the way around that track. So yeah, a horrible weekend all around for the Scuderia. I'm not going to bash on them. I'm not going to be one of those guys, the Formula One community love to bash on anyone when they're low, and especially at, at Ferrari. Don't get me wrong, they're doing horrible. They're partly the reason why Formula One is, why we're in this period of Mercedes domination where no one can catch them, because teams like Ferrari should be up there and they're not. So yeah, I'm not going to bash too much on them. They know that they need to improve. They know that they're in a really tough period in their time. They need to come together and just try and go through 2020, not kind of have massive targets, just try and get the basics down, because again, they're struggling as a team, they're struggling with their car, and then the drivers don't have any confidence to drive. So yeah, it's all around it's just a web of problems at Ferrari, and yeah, a horrible weekend for them. So yeah, not too much to say. Again, I'm not going to bash on them, but yeah, it does hurt to see Ferrari down there. I'm a Ferrari fan. I feel like anyone who's a Formula One fan wants to see Ferrari do well. It's so special when we see them win, and it is very horrible to see them down there. But nevertheless, hopefully they do make a comeback sometime in the near future. So yeah, an all-round bad weekend by the Scuderia, and a really horrible finish to their home race. So I'm sure they're going to want to really bounce back, or at least get some positivity out of the next race, which of course is in Italy once again at Mugello. So next, let's move on to Mercedes. I mean, what a crazy race they've had. It's kind of weird how Formula One is with Mercedes and bad races. It always seems like when Mercedes have a bad race, when they have a crash or when something goes wrong, that race is an absolute banger. And yet again, that proves true. I mean, even in 2020. So as far as their two drivers, I'm going to talk about Lewis Hamilton first of all. Now, from the start of the race, he looked absolutely confident. He was coasting, especially after he saw the problems that Valtteri Bottas was having, and as he, of course, fell back. I mean, it was the Lewis Hamilton kind of classic performance. He was probably going to, walk it from start to finish, fastest lap, see you later, 90th win, I'll see you in Mugello, guys. But that did not happen. The race just got flipped on its head, just like that. of course, the Kevin Magnussen retirement first of all, and then the Charles Leclerc crash afterwards. And now, as far as the Kevin Magnussen issue, of course, when he retired and pulled over to the side of the track, it was right at the beginning of the pit lane, and the pit lane was shut to kind of protect the marshals who were trying to push the car back into the pits, which I thought was a bit surprising. I thought they would have just, kind of put it back into their, little orange spot just behind the barriers, but nevertheless, they tried to push it through, and the pit lane was shut. However, Mercedes still pulled Lewis Hamilton in, and I think the reason why they did that, it was a lapse of concentration because every single team knew that the pit lane was shut. The engineers, they get apparently a notification on their monitors to say the pit lane is shut, you can't come in. But I feel like for Mercedes, and I've got to admit, for myself too, when I saw that safety car come out, automatically I thought in my head, of course, Hamilton comes in, cheap pit stop. Yeah, it's a little bit kind of close with the tires because they weren't quite into the pit stop window, but you can't just pass a safety car. So it was almost natural for them to come in for the pit stop, and I think it was just a lapse of concentration, and you can really tell because we've got a little bit of footage of Toto Wolff talking to the pit wall, and they didn't really have an answer. So I think it was just a lapse of concentration from the Mercedes pit wall, and they pitted Lewis Hamilton in when he should have not been in because the pit lane was closed. It was kind of, bang to rights. Lewis Hamilton has no leg to stand on. It was absolutely, justified to get that 10-second stop-go penalty. And by the way, what a harsh penalty, and I feel like it's fully fair again. So he had a lot of work to do, and coming back, to be honest, finishing in 7th, when you consider the fact that with 27 laps to go, he was 28 seconds behind the race leader, Pierre Gasly. To come back and finish in 7th is actually, again, an amazing recovery drive. And, the Mercedes struggles to follow because the way they set up their car is very similar to how Red Bull set up their car during their dominance. It's all about quality. It's all about banging out those pole positions and leading from start to finish. Sometimes they do struggle to overtake. So yeah, it was a really interesting race to see Lewis Hamilton come through the field. He was able to come, again, all the way up to 7th, which I think is a really good result for him. But again, it just wasn't his day. And at the end of the day, that just sometimes happens for Mercedes. And again, it kind of seems like when they have a bad day, we have an amazing race. But I'm sure they'll bounce back because that's what Mercedes do. Straight away, Lewis Hamilton was totally humble and said, we just made a mistake. It just wasn't our day. I made a mistake as well. And we know Mercedes, the one thing that they're always able to do is bounce back from a bad weekend. So yeah, Mercedes 1-2 in Mugello. I would not even be surprised. Now, as far as Valtteri Bottas, a poor race from start to finish. There's no defending Valtteri. I never had confidence in him to overtake anyone in that race. He just doesn't kind of give you that confidence that he's going to go for those moves. He's going to get it done. He did have a little bit of damage, but right from the beginning of the race, to see him drop back so far and struggle so much. Again, I know he had apparently a little bit of damage, but it just wasn't good enough. It just wasn't good enough from start to finish. It was a poor start. It was poor in terms of overtaking. And even in the second part of the race, when he didn't even have his teammate up there to beat, it was only the midfield cars. He didn't even make an impression. And in fact, he was almost starting to fall back a little bit. So yeah, a poor race from start to finish. Wasn't able to overtake Norris at the end, and I'm not quite sure where Valtteri is in his, in his headspace at the moment, because mentally it is very tough. That was a big opportunity. He should have won that race when Lewis Hamilton had an off day, when circumstances almost kind of went against Lewis Hamilton. This is where Valtteri Bottas should have picked up 25 or even 26 points to kind of push Lewis a little bit in the championship, and it just didn't happen. So yeah, for Mercedes in general, it was a bad day, but it gave us a great race, so I'm not complaining. Mercedes, they're always going to come back because they're probably the most efficient team in the history of Formula 1. They're probably the most self-critical team in the history of Formula 1. And again, whenever they had a bad day, they always seem to come back stronger, especially with Lewis Hamilton. So yeah, again, Mugello is going to be a very interesting one to see what happens afterwards and what Mercedes learned from the mistakes that they made in this race moving on into the future. Anyway, enough of all of the Ferrari and Mercedes shenanigans. It's time to talk about Pierre Gasly. Pierre Gasly, Carlos Sainz, Lance Stroll, Kimi Raikkonen, all of the midfield guys fighting for the race win. It was, do you know what? It felt really weird. It felt so special and so surreal to watch Lewis Hamilton, out of position, the Mercedes and the Red Bulls and the Ferraris out of position, and to actually see the midfield fighting for a race win. We joke about the Formula 1.5 and, what the championship would be without the top teams, and we saw it today. And what an unbelievable sprint to the finish. Now, let's talk about the McLarens first of all. Now, on a personal note, seeing the McLarens, I think right at the beginning of the race, they were second and third at one point because obviously Bottas dropped back, and seeing them actually fight, almost for a race win at the beginning of the race, and seeing them second and third was so emotional and so incredible for me, because I grew up being a McLaren fan, and right at the beginning of the 2010s, and they were always a top team. They were always fighting for podiums and race wins and championships, and it was almost a little bit of a flashback. And towards the end of the race, it almost came true with Carlos Sainz almost overtaking Pierre Gasly for the race win. What an unbelievable race, by the way, from Carlos Sainz. To be honest, I don't want to take anything away from Pierre Gasly because he was absolutely amazing. I love you, Pierre. But in terms of the overall weekend, I think Carlos Sainz has to be my driver of the weekend. He also didn't luck into the strategy like a lot of the other guys. In fact, he was really kind of went against him in terms of that race, in terms of the strategy. So he had to fight right back up to second place, and he finished the race, I think it was 4/10 behind Pierre Gasly. I genuinely think that 1 or 2 laps more, and he would have won that race for McLaren. You can see so many people in that garage. It was just nail-biting stuff, but sadly, Carlos Sainz couldn't quite manage that race win. At least this time, he gets to celebrate his podium actually after the race, and not 2 or 3 hours after the race. But nevertheless, an amazing result for McLaren. It was so refreshing to see them back up there. And on a personal note, again, I just loved it. I'm so happy for that team. Is he regretting his move to Ferrari? I'm not sure. It's something that I'm going to make a video about very, very soon. But certainly, this team is going in all of the right places, and it was incredible to see them fighting up there. So yeah, McLaren, what a day for them. Anyway, guys, now let's talk about Pierre Gasly. I mean, I can't find the right words. It was so emotional to see him cross the line, winning the race, winning for AlphaTauri in their kind of home Grand Prix, because of course they are an Italian team. And of course, the last time someone won for AlphaTauri, or Toro Rosso as they were back in the day, was a certain Sebastian Vettel, and he went on to become a 4-time world champion. So certainly good signs for Pierre Gasly. But in general, seeing him cross that line, it was so emotional. And if you guys follow Jess from motorsport.com, of course, formerly of WTF1 on Instagram, she had a tear in her eye. I saw on her Instagram video that she did when Pierre Gasly crossed the line. And guys, to be honest, I was feeling it as well. My eyes were almost watering seeing Pierre Gasly and seeing the emotion over the team radio, because you've got to understand the roller coaster that this guy has been through over the past 12, 18 months, from being at Red Bull to being dropped by Red Bull when he just wasn't doing a good enough job, then losing one of his best friends, Antoine Hubert, last year in 2019, and then being, going back to Toro Rosso and doing such a good job getting that podium in Brazil, and then stepping his game up for 2020, being one of the standout drivers, and now, winning the Italian Grand Prix. Pierre Gasly coming out on top after that crazy race. You just couldn't write it. You just could not write it. And I am so happy for Pierre. And of course, what's incredible is that my last video was about Pierre Gasly. And yeah, definitely go check that out. So it's quite, funny little coincidence. But I feel like that video holds even more weight now, especially after what's happened, and there's going to be so many questions. We know what the big questions are going to be after his win at the Italian Grand Prix. What should be his future? Should he leave Red Bull? Should he be, of course, almost promoted back up to the top team alongside Max Verstappen, because Albon, again, did not have a good race, got a 5-second penalty for some bad driving against Romain Grosjean. It was, the first of many bad races, and not the last one either, I'm sure. So yeah, there's going to be so many questions about Pierre Gasly, Alexander Albon, Red Bull. What should happen to Pierre? Because he is a quality driver. He's found his mojo back. He's got that confidence, that swagger, and we love to see it. And overall, there could not have been a better winner for this race, and I am so happy for Pierre Gasly. He is a very popular winner, and yeah, the community is definitely feeling it, and he was the star of the show in the end because he drove under so much pressure. He said in an interview that he almost crashed 10 times because his tires were just dead with all of that pressure from Carlos Sainz, and that is not easy because Carlos is a top-level driver. So yeah, what an incredible race by Pierre Gasly, voted as the driver of the day, and to be honest, I don't blame them. So yeah, an absolutely incredible race by Pierre Gasly, so well deserved. And again, from me, it was amazing and emotional and just undescribable. I could not actually speak out the race. I could not believe what I was seeing. But again, so happy for Pierre Gasly because he deserves all of it and so much more. So yeah, well done, Pierre. So yeah, that's kind of my really big highlights and my really big reaction The last thing I've got to say is that, you know, there's a lot of people, and I see all the time actually, even in my comments, about how boring Formula 1 is, how boring Mercedes domination is. And yes, I agree to an extent. The 2020 season has been a little bit dull due to the fact that Red Bull and Ferrari just yet again have not been able to deliver, which is extremely frustrating. However, I think this race has proven so many people wrong. It's proven so many of the doubters and the people who said that I'm never going to watch Formula 1 again. It's showed exactly why we love this sport. And even doesn't matter how boring this sport gets, doesn't matter how, you know, how much one driver continues to dominate, I will always come back because I just love this sport so much. I'm just that passionate. And yeah, I mean, this race once again proved to expect the unexpected, not just in 2020, but in Formula 1 as well, because you never know what's around the corner next in Formula 1. And certainly after the 2020 Italian Grand Prix, the unbelievable race that we just witnessed, yeah, I cannot wait for the rest of the season, because even if Lewis Hamilton goes on to dominate, yeah, there's going to be a few surprises, and all of the Mercedes domination, they just make this kind of race so much more sweeter. Well guys, there you go. That is my video talking about the 2020 Italian Grand Prix. I need to catch my breath because what a race that was. I can't wait to watch it again. Let me know what you guys thought of Ferrari, Mercedes, you know, Carlos Sainz, Pierre Gasly, anything you guys thought. Let me know in the comments below. I cannot wait to see what you guys thought of that unbelievably chaotic and crazy race. And yeah, I certainly hope that you enjoyed this video. And if you did, then don't forget to drop a like, smash that subscribe button, and don't forget to check out my social medias. Instagram and Twitter will be above. And guys, never stop believing in Formula 1. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.